Now let's talk about the heart of the database, which is the tables that are in your database. And since these are the main objects in the database, I want to start at the very foundational level with these and make sure that we're all on the same page. In previous videos, in other places in the course, I've talked about normalization, the benefits of normalization, systematic database design, designing the database objects, and that sort of thing. And here I want to kind of pause, if you will, and talk about the very basics on tables. Now, if you're an experienced database developer or administrator, this stuff is just really, really foundational. But if you're coming to databases as a brand new occupation, then this stuff is really going to help you to understand what's going on here. First of all, the tables are where we actually store and maintain the data. It's why we're here. Now, there are 4 types of table objects or 4 types of tables in SQL Server 2008, and you need to be aware of each one of these because they each have distinct purposes, and you'll see them as we go through the course here. The first one is what's called a permanent table, and this is, in other words, a standard table. This is what you will normally use, probably 80 to 90% of the time. So you would create a table called employees to store data about your employees, and notice the name there, simply employees. Then there are local temporary tables, and you will notice that these are preceded by a single pound or number sign, whichever you call that. And so if you see a single pound sign employees, this tells you that the name of the table is employees, but it's a local temporary table. Now that means that this table will be created in a temporary database in the TempDB database, and I can freely query it or use it, but only the person who created it in that particular session can use this table, and once that session ends, then this table goes away. Kind of think of it like a variable almost. Then a global temporary table, same deal, but it has 2 pound signs in front of it. And when I create a global temporary table, then anybody from any session signed into the SQL Server can see and manipulate the data in this table. And so you'll have to decide which one fits whatever scenario you're trying to develop a solution for. Now, a table variable has been around for a couple of versions of SQL Server, but this creates a table in memory. And same deal as the temporaries. The table variable will live in memory as long as I'm working with it, and once I've completed working with it, it simply goes away. And table variables are very quick since they all operate in RAM. There's a lot of cool things, and so you'll see some of them a little bit later on, and then you can go out and read about them and see exactly what advantages they might bring to you. Now, when you create a table, you're going to designate the columns in the table, and this is where you're going to store individual pieces of information based on that data's data type. Is it character information? Is it number information? If so, what range of numbers do we want to store? From 0 to 255, or from negative 32,700 and something up to positive 32,700 and something. Different data types give us more and more space. Now the rows, think of a row as a complete sentence. Each row in a table is one complete occurrence of the object information being stored in the table. So if we have a table called employees, then the columns are going to be the pieces of information we need to store about the employee. Last name, first name, address, city, state, zip, phone number, that sort of thing. An entire row of that information obviously is one record or one employee. So it is a complete occurrence of that employee object, and we can store multiple employee objects, obviously, in multiple rows in the table. So think of a row as a complete single record. And that is what a table will look like. And you will notice we have our column names at the top, and when we created this table, we designated the data types, and I'm going to show you something about that in just a second. And now we can put those data types in. Now, something else that will confuse you when you read about database tables out there in a lot of different locations, they will refer to the columns as fields. So fields are columns, and then, of course, a record is the same thing as a row. And you will see these interchanged even in some of Microsoft's nomenclature, so don't let that fool you. That's just different terms that people use for these things. Now that's a very basic look at tables, but make sure you understand these aspects of a table because we're going to use this. This becomes foundational in everything else that we build our databases on.